Hi, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Divorce-a-Palooza. So, what do you do when you run into your ex? That can be traumatic. It can make you feel shocked if you didn't expect it. It can make you sad afterwards. It can make you angry. It can make you feel insecure, like, oh my gosh, I looked horrible. I can't believe I ran into him. Or there's just so many feelings that go along with running into your ex. And my guest and I are going to talk about how it might feel and how to handle those feelings. My guest is Juli Walton. Julie is an LCPC, a therapist, a divorce mediator, and the founder of North Shore Reach. Hi, Julie.
Hi, Jackie. Nice to
How
see
are you
you.
today? Thanks so much for being here.
I'm good, thanks. Thanks for having me.
Do you agree with me that when your patients tell you, I ran into my ex, they're upset about it, they have all these feelings? What are they feeling?
So, 100% I agree with you that they have all these feelings. And there's also all those feelings when you worry about running into your ex. So, I think like the reality of actually running into your ex can create so much anxiety for someone, kind of like all the emotions you just listed: fear, shock, anxiety, embarrassment, anger. Um, Worry about how you look, insecurity, all those things bubble up to the top. And and it can make that encounter really, really uncomfortable.
And don't you feel like if somebody would is listening to this and asked their friends, said to their friends like, "Oh, I'm so worried because I know I'm going to see my ex here." And the friend would say, "Why do you still care?" Because you do. Why do you, what would you say to that?
Well, you know what? It takes a long time for the feelings of divorce to actually normalize. I mean, sometimes it takes a lifetime. Sometimes people that divorce are never able to get over their anger and their hatred and their hurt. And so that's why, because you have big feelings still, even though you're not married anymore and your big feelings may not be positive, there are still big feelings that cause anxiety and cause stress for us. And it makes us worry about that encounter, especially the first one.
And you know how when you're going through a divorce, you're having all these feelings, and then you run into your ex and it's a trigger. It's like brings it all back,
Yes.
or by the way, you could run into your ex with his new girlfriend. That's really hard. It's happened to me before. And it was pretty quickly after the divorce. And you feel, I remember feeling like, oh, this is so unfair. He moved on. I'm alone. Everybody knows it. I can't believe why would God do this to me? That's what I said. Like, why would
Right.
God have me run into him and his new girlfriend? And so it can be really, it can stir up feelings of anger. You can feel like, oh, I'm such a loser. I'm alone and he's not. No, that is not the case at all.
It's definitely not the case. What happens is, our insecurity thermometer goes way up. And if you, so, there's a couple of different scenarios. Like you may be going to a wedding or an event that you know that your ex is going to be at. So you can prepare for that. And there are things to do to prepare for that. But if you run into your ex unexpectedly, like I said, your insecurity meter goes way, way up. And you start assuming that things are better for them than they are for you, or that they're happier than you are, or that all different kinds of comparisons come to mind. And so, yes, that is anxiety at its finest. And anxiety is in us, it lives in us because it's meant to use as like a warning, like a protector. So if you become anxious when you see your ex walking towards you, it's because you want to protect yourself. And it's really, really natural to have that kind of a reaction.
So I have heard the term magical thinking before. Have you ever heard that, Julie? I mean, you're a
Sure.
therapist, of course you have. And tell me if I'm right. That is when somebody runs into their ex and says to themselves, oh, they look so happy. I'm sure their relationship is blissful. They're probably so glad they got divorced from me and they don't even have one worry in the world. That is an example of magical thinking, right?
It's an example, yes.
It's like when you just make up stuff. And why do we do that to ourselves? That's like torturing yourself.
Well, I think again, it kind of goes back to that whole insecurity thing where it's hard to believe that for as unhappy as you are, or as hard as it has been for you to make progress and pick yourself up and try to find, ways to change. It's hard to imagine that they're doing worse. So you automatically go to the assumption, again, here we are with assumptions, that they're doing better. Of course they're doing better. They have more money. They have more time. They are living a life that is really not that much different than it was before. They have more friends. They have a bigger support system. Whatever it is that you think that they have more of, that whole magical thinking concept is telling you, you're the one in this situation that is doing much worse. They're doing much better. And I think it all goes back to just our own insecurity and our own self-esteem and our own belief in our sense of self. All of that can be attended to by creating a bigger support system and, believing in yourself and taking good care of yourself and getting enough validation and prioritizing yourself. But if you're caught in a weak moment and you run into your ex-spouse, you can go down that rabbit hole pretty quickly. And I mean, it's not good for you, and it doesn't necessarily mean any of it's true, but you can get there pretty quickly.
Okay, so you kind of got into what to do because that was going to be my next question. What do you do when you go down that magical thinking rabbit hole? Do you see your therapist? You said surround yourself with good support. What should somebody do when they're actually doing that?
I think the first thing that someone needs to do is to remind themselves the hard part is over. Like, we've already been through the divorce. Yes, where I am now, I'm assuming that we're like post decree and this is, after the divorce is over. So,
Well, even you could be in the middle of your divorce and the worst is over because I want to tell people who are watching this, sometimes you'll look back and realize that the worst part was when you were living with the person. And, maybe the divorce was like the start of a better life. And so the worst part, we don't know when that is.
okay, that's fair. And I think in every situation it's really different. But hypothetically, if you're in like towards the end of the divorce or post decree and you run into this person, you have to congratulate yourself and remind yourself that like the worst is over and I survived it. And from this point forward, if I survive that, I can do anything. So first and foremost is to really congratulate yourself and recognize how much you've been through, how much you've accomplished, how hard it was, and where you are today, that you're still standing strong. Additionally, like I said before, focus on you, focus on getting a support system that feels really compassionate and really helpful, that you're not afraid to go to when you've just had too much, that you're not worried they're going to be like, oh my God, here she comes again. Know who your support system is and make sure that they're in place. And remember that you're going to give back sometimes, so it's okay to ask. Don't be afraid to ask. But if you run into your ex, check in with yourself, reflect on what happened, process it, seek validation. There is nothing wrong with saying to your mom or your sister or your best friend, am I right? Am I crazy? What just happened? I'm feeling all these feelings. Is this unnatural? Seek validation because it's not unnatural. It's most likely your ex is feeling the same way too.
It's also great to go to a divorce support group and tell them what happened. So I'm a
Yeah.
big believer in divorce support groups, and there's some on Divorce Girl Smiling that you can check out. Okay,
Yeah.
I also want to say, Julie, that I would tell people, remember that it's not a contest. It's not a
Yes.
contest between you and your ex, like, oh, he has a girlfriend and I don't have a boyfriend. Who cares? He's living in a nicer house than me. Well, if you don't like your house, do something about it. And it doesn't matter if his house is more expensive. What's important to you? You're on your own road and don't compare yourself with him.
I completely agree. That kind of goes along with when I said, avoid assumptions and avoid comparisons. Because truthfully, we don't really know what's going on in his life. All we know is where our head is taking us. Because most likely you're not going to get into a deep conversation about how things are, what's been going on, how work is, etc. So you're assuming and you're comparing, and that's dangerous.
Okay, we have a couple minutes left, but I want to deliver what we promised, which is if you run into your ex, and I want to tell everyone, Julie wrote an article for Divorced Girl Smiling on this subject. So just go to divorcedgirlsmiling.com if you want to read it. And if you run into your ex and it's a chance encounter, you wrote, try to appear calm and composed. So we're
Mhm.
prepping you right now. So if you listen to this, you'll always know this. So this is good. And then you wrote, assess the situation. And then you wrote, and be civil and respectful. And then you said, and set boundaries. So tell me about the whole thing, what someone should do if they run into their ex.
So, in terms of assessing the situation, assess where you are. If you're in a public place, if you're in a crowded space, if it's just the two of you in a very awkward situation, you have to sort of assess the situation to understand what a comfortable behavior would be like for you. Are you alone? Are you in public? Does he have someone on his arm, and does this require you to just sort of gracefully acknowledge them and then come up with an exit strategy? By assessing the situation, it will direct the way that you can act, or that you are comfortable in terms of acting. I don't think that there's any obligation in terms of asking questions other than, like I said, being civil and respectful. I do think it's really important to keep boundaries up, no matter if you're in a public situation, if it's just the two of you, by happenstance getting on an elevator together. um, be be okay with what you decide to do. If it's too overwhelming for you, if it's too triggering for you, you can excuse yourself. I need to use the ladies room, and then walk away, because you don't have to be in a situation that makes you miserable and uncomfortable and fearful for how you're going to act. You can take yourself out of it. But again, depending on where you are and how many people are around, it will make it easier or not as easy. As far as civil and respectful, were you going to ask a question?
I was just gonna say, I have a great idea for people. Pick up your phone and just pretend like you just got a call and then be like, oh, sorry to take this, and
Right.
walk out of the room with the phone. Works
Right.
every time.
Yep. It's a great idea. Love those phones.
Okay.
Civil and respectful. I mean, I think we probably all tell our kids, if you can't say anything nice, don't say anything at all. It's sort of that line of thinking. Like, yes, you were married to this person for a certain amount of years. You may have had children with this person. You may have had one or multiple homes, and you may hate them. You may absolutely loathe them and have no respect for them anymore. And you know that they've lied to you and they've hurt you and they've betrayed you. But it's not going to help anyone if you can't just treat them like a stranger, just be civil. And so that old saying, if you can't say anything nice, don't say anything at all. If there's not one thing that you can say that's pleasant, then just stand there and be respectful. Civil and respectful is always better than engaging and disruptive, and then having regrets later.
Nobody ever regretted being civil or respectful. Nobody ever in the history of life.
Right.
But they always regret being angry, saying something mean. Then you start to feel guilty. You don't like yourself. Trust me, I have lived both of these scenarios, and
Right.
nobody ever regretted. Like, for people watching, have you ever said, boy, I wish I wasn't that nice?
No.
No, because it just makes you like yourself, realize you took the high road. Your ex is going to do what your ex is going to do. You can only do what you're going to do.
And I think that's a really good point. Like, no matter what, we cannot change the way someone else is going to behave. So visualize yourself having had success in this moment. Visualize yourself back in the car in 20 minutes. And what does it feel like to know that you handled it well and you survived it? So here again, we're going to congratulate ourselves. And you may be shaking like a leaf and ready to burst into tears. And that's when you go get your support and you seek validation. But in the moment, visualize success. Remember that you cannot control someone else. You can only control your own behavior, and that behavior should be civil and respectful. Have boundaries. If they start asking you questions, remember you owe them no answers, particularly not personal answers. So keep your boundaries in place. Have some sort of a canned answer that makes you feel like, you know, it's not any of their business, but you're not saying it's none of your business because that might feel confrontational. Just be almost as if they're a stranger.
I absolutely love it. Civil and respectful. Julie, thank you so much for being on Divorceapalooza.
Thank you. It's always nice to see you.
And to everyone watching, Julie is taking new patients. You can find her at northshorereach.com. And you can also find Julie in the trusted professional section of Divorced Girl Smiling, which is divorcedgirlsmiling.com. Thanks so much for watching, everyone.